take us to the finishing line. We've got CEO of Sydney Metro, Peter Regan, to have a bit of a chat about the biggest infrastructure project in the country, and one we heard a little bit about just then. If we're using the Sydney Morning Herald as a guide, it's after housing, probably the most talked about issue in the city. Please welcome to the stage Peter Regan. Welcome, mate.
All right. Hey, Adam. How are you? Hello, everyone.
These people are all here for you because, I think you're the draw card. You're the one that was going to make people stay or go. So I don't know whether you want to take this as a sign of respect or offence, but...
There's not that many people here.
No. Well, I'd say at least a good quarter at least. But we've had a big day today, and it's been a big week, and it's a big time of year. So take that into account. Now... Probably should need to preface this conversation by saying there are some things that you can and can't talk about, and I know you're a seasoned pro and you can talk about things and balance that line between what's appropriate and what's not, but if there is anything that's out of line, there might be some Slido questions, and if these guys are here, they've probably got some for you. That will come through, and if you can't answer them, you can't, but hopefully you can. I do want to start by saying, obviously, Metro conversation has been around for a while, and I think what's interesting is the shift that's occurred from where we were, maybe 6-7 years ago when we first started this, the narrative around the Metro and what it could do. At that point it was a lot about connectivity, and we're talking Metro West specifically. The connection between the CBD and Parramatta was one that was always talked about, that the economic opportunities that a fast link between the two CBDs of Sydney could generate would be pretty transformational. Conversation shifted a little bit in recent times, and it's probably a lot more focused on urban renewal opportunities and housing. Do you think we've moved away from the time conversation and where it's now more about how many stations we could potentially add to the line? If so, did you expect that?
Yeah, look, really great question. I think the fact that people have seen the Metro in the Northwest has probably given them a better understanding of what a Metro is and what it can do to different parts of the city. And absolutely, new connectivity, faster, more reliable connectivity on a new network, which also provides opportunities on existing networks for more resilience and more capacity. We've seen that in the Northwest, but we've also seen what that kind of infrastructure unlocks in terms of housing and in terms of other broader economic activity. And so I think these kind of projects offer both, and the need to be able to move quickly and reliably is essential, but Metro and Sydney Metro as a transport product has always had an eye on the precinct outcome around it, and I think increasingly there's a really strong focus on what that means in a housing context, and what that means in a housing context, not just on the land that's directly above or adjacent to the Metro itself, but around the precinct, and what else can be done to ensure that the benefit of having invested that infrastructure in a precinct gets as much bang for buck in terms of the broader objectives that government and the community are looking for.
We just heard from the previous panel and wanted to give you a right of reply, even though you may not be able to, but there was some conversation there about what happens next, and it's one that we prosecute pretty routinely at the dialogue. How do you respond to some of the comments? And I think the Mayor of Liverpool, Ned, had a view, and I think if you had other councils here, then they'd probably have another view. How are you balancing all of the different perspectives? And obviously there's a review coming out very shortly, which we can't preempt, but in your mind, how are the needs being considered within government, and what's on your agenda in terms of how they're managed ongoing?
Well, in some ways that's a relatively simple question for me to answer, because we build what the government asks us to build. Mm-hmm. We give them advice on the different options. Depending on what lens you look at, the various potential extensions to the transport network, you would come up with a different set of priorities. What I can say about the Western Sydney Airport Metro line is, as Patrick mentioned before, it was very much designed to be extended and designed contractually to enable those extensions. But a lot of work goes into determining what a railway investment should be, and alignments, are not just lines on maps. There's a lot of work that has to be done to work out where best to put the railway, above ground, on the ground, under the ground, where to put the stations, what are you trying to do around those stations, what are the other constraints in different parts of Sydney. Contamination or other land use are very real issues. I think one of the fascinating things about the Western Sydney Airport project is because it is quite visionary, the airport itself and the railway to the airport, the new metro, that it is certainly something that we can build faster once all the approvals and contracts are in place than where you're building in really densely populated areas. One of the reasons I'm a little less formal than I might otherwise be is I've actually been out at the airport site this morning, walking in some of the new tunnels that we've built, and it is coming along so fast that there's still a long way to go, but incredible progress being made out there. And so there are definitely opportunities, and we've been looking at bringing it in to the southeast. The government has announced and committed funding to expand that business case, to also look at other options south, and also to look at options north. So we need to do the work to give government that suite of options as to what each of those would achieve from both a transport point of view and a land use point of view, so that then they're in a position to make the choice as to which one comes next.
Your jeans and your shirt and your boots are looking pretty clean, mate, so I don't know if you did a lot of work out there.
These weren't the boots I was wearing, and I was wearing a fair bit more safety equipment, so... Good
to hear.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be surprised to know that the feds have been a bit of a topic du jour today. Wanted to get your view on the review that was handed down yesterday. Obviously, we see the federal government, along with the state government, playing a pretty significant role in the city shaping agenda in the region. Yesterday's announcement looked like a little bit of a retreat. Didn't probably send the sort of signal that we'd like to see in Western Sydney from the federal government. What's your view on the role of the federal government in terms of investing and being part of these projects? And are you concerned, not worried about the message that yesterday's announcement sent?
Oh, well, certainly the federal government has a really significant role to play and has been playing. I think the investment in the airport itself and the 50% funding into the metro to the airport are clearly things that I'm very close to and focused on. I think you need to look at it in the round, and the bulk of infrastructure is delivered at a state government level. It doesn't mean it all needs to be funded at a state government level, but trying to get that balance right. And I know the federal government, in that review, has looked at how they direct funding to areas and outcomes, perhaps not necessarily just projects. And in some ways, that gives the opportunity for the other levels of government, state and local government, to really try and have more of a say in the prioritisation and what comes next. There's still a very significant amount of federal investment in infrastructure in New South Wales and across Sydney, but particularly in Western Sydney. I think clearly there's some questions around some of the specifics on those projects, but from our point of view, we're looking to finish the job that we've got, looking to make sure that we give, and when I say give government options, give state and federal government options for extensions to the line, and really try and push for what the outcome that they're looking for is. And is it connectivity? Is it just connectivity to the airport and the Aerotropolis and to the rest of the transport network, or are we looking to support existing housing or new housing or other types of economic activity? And ultimately, I think it's a mix, but what excites me about the Western Sydney Airport metro line particularly is that it's being built in advance of a lot of the development that will naturally follow and flow to it, and so you'll get a more planned outcome. The other metro lines have all got their role to play, and Metro West is not just about connecting the city and Parramatta. There's a huge further benefit that it brings as well, but certainly the role of those really big, and they are expensive, anchor infrastructure investments clearly has to be to do just that, to anchor parts of the city and then to provide connections between different parts of the city and within different parts of the city.
On the topic of the airport line, there is a question there that's come through, which is probably a nice segue into Joe Halen said earlier that St Mary's would be the centre of the universe soon. Your minister's comments. How will that station be more than a hop-on point for the airport shuttle train?
Well, certainly the connection between the existing Sydney train services and the metro service and other connecting services will be a real catalyst and an opportunity to revitalise. And there's a significant amount of land around those investments that can also support more housing and more commercial activity. I think when you then look into the future, the existing line, and it will bring a lot of people into St Mary's, but when you look at potential extensions further to the north, I think you can see how it does become quite a hub. And because you're connecting to east-west transport while you're building north-south transport. And there are a lot of opportunities for that east-west transport to operate in different ways. It doesn't all have to be sort of all-stop trains. There's express services and the like, and direct connections to Parramatta and further east. Certainly, and I know different people will always have different views on where infrastructure should go, but it's a reasonable place to start to ensure that the line being built north-south does connect to that main western corridor to give as many people as possible the ability to genuinely use public transport to get to the new airport and to get to those new precincts.
And obviously that link north and south is one that's going to probably create a fair bit of debate and discussion over the coming years, and we'll see where it lands. But one of the other points there is when in FY24 can we expect to catch a metro train from Rouse Hill to Gadigal, which is the CBD location? Should we pack a jacket or a beach towel?
Depends what your what your appetite is for cold weather or nice warm weather. I mean, we're certainly targeting the city section of the extension to the North West Metro to be online around the middle of next year. Yes, it's in its testing and commissioning phase now. The stations are, for the most part, 90-95% complete. The line's in testing, the train's being tested. It is a very extensive testing process that we go through, and then we trial the actual operations for a number of months as well. But certainly we're tracking pretty well. We've always said it would open in 2024, and very confident that is the case, and we're targeting around the middle of the year.
Yeah. The images that have been sent or circulated on social media by the ministers of Gadigal Station certainly look impressive, so I can understand why people are looking forward to that opening. One of the other points, and it comes up a lot, is the first and last mile connectivity, and there's a question here about how do we ensure seamless connectivity for passengers transferring between the different modes of transportation?
It's absolutely essential. There's no point at all building fancy new transport, public transport, if it's not connecting to everything else that's around it, and if it's not creating the opportunity for an attractive place for people to enter into the transport system. And I think in the past people used to think about sort of interchange between bus and train. Now I think we're thinking much more broadly. It's all the modes of transport, and the metro stations, wherever they can, are including significant improvements in those interchanges with other rail lines where they intersect, with bus and rideshare opportunities, but also active transport. We're providing really secure bike parking facilities at a lot of our new stations as well. I think increasingly you'll see people using whatever other forms of sort of micro mobility become the latest fad or latest opportunity, and our job is to make sure that we're building precincts around those stations that are attractive for people to journey to, even if they're just walking in there, so that interchange is key. And St Mary's, a lot of our focus at St Mary's has been how to get that interchange as smooth and as intuitive as possible, because it will have people who are commuting through there, but it will also have people coming from the airlines who might necessarily be going through there all the time. So making the stations and the precincts really legible, great wayfinding, and intuitive to move through is really key, because it hasn't been the biggest thing in Sydney, interchanging between trains and different forms of transport historically, but certainly around the world, much more so. And we have a great opportunity to design it to really facilitate and encourage that.
On the topic of the experience, it's easy to forget that the Northwest Metro has been around now for a few years. What are you hear? What have you heard, and what are you hearing around the customer experience around that line? And is there anything that you think you need to improve? Are you taking on that feedback? There's a question there about how you're routinely capturing feedback and community sentiment. What are you hearing on the Northwest side of things?
Well, I don't know whether that was put in by someone as a Dorothy Dixer, but it's a question I'm very happy to answer. So 4.5 years or so of operations now, we've carried over 70 million passengers on the Northwest Metro. It's operating at a very, very high level of performance and reliability, regularly over 99% performance levels. And that of itself means that people are very, very confident and comfortable that if they turn up, it's going to be there and it's going to be running as intended. And that helps draw people in. I think the precincts, the cleanliness, the design of those precincts, the speed, frequency, reliability are all good things that bring people to a transport product. We measure in detail. We have various customer satisfaction surveys, as they do in all modes of transport. And some of you may have heard me mention this. We've historically been at around 97, 98% on the Northwest Metro, which is very high customer satisfaction. But we've struggled to get past our competitor of the Sydney Ferries network, which also operates at 98%. Now, I think that's because people on the ferries are generally already pretty relaxed. But the most recent customer satisfaction score on the Northwest Metro actually was 99%. So we're very proud of that.
Who's that 1%?
I don't know who the one person was, although I'm hoping they asked more than 100 people, actually. But I think what that is suggesting is that people really do rate and are attracted to something that works reliably, efficiently, quickly, and is a pleasant place to be, to move through. And that's what it should be. If your governments invest the kind of money that's being invested in that kind of transport, well then you would hope you do get a really high quality outcome.
Yeah. One final one, back onto the airport. There's a question here around how are you looking at access for Western Sydney Airport for Southwest Sydney as an economic and social benefit in the business case for extending Metro from Bradfield to Glenfield?
Yeah, so I think it goes to that question as to what lens do you look through in determining sort of what the next set of priorities are. Clearly, the development that will flow over time, and it will be in some cases over a long time, in the Aerotropolis, around the airport, and along the existing part of the line and the extensions, it makes sense to have anchored that with the Metro. Some of the business case work we are doing is looking at how do we connect to other centres or how do we connect to other forms of transport to be able to do that. And I think there's a range of options there, and certainly trying to find the best combination, particularly to connect the north-south line into, as mentioned before, Glenfield, Liverpool, into the existing train networks there. I think it's important that that work continues on that to work out how best to do that. Yeah, you can also move people non-rail. My focus is clearly the Metro rail. But I think that needs to be done in a very integrated fashion, and certainly the work that we're working with Transport for New South Wales on is looking at an integrated package of transport in and around that area, and especially to those centres of economic activity in the southwest.
I can see the clock ticking and there's 56 seconds left, so I'm going to throw one more at you, and it's one that we probably should have discussed earlier, but a lot of the focus and conversation around Metro this year has been on costs and delivery times, but costs specifically. What can legitimately government control around the cost of projects, particularly Metro projects, and is there anything that you've learnt this year that will affect some change within government about how to manage future costs?
I think governments need to, and the public need to be realistic upfront as well. And big complicated projects, whether they be railways or any kind of infrastructure, do have challenges, and they get to the point where you can't just wrap it up in a single contract and pass it to the private sector and say, there you go, you deliver it and you take the risk. I think we're well beyond being able to pass all the risk in one go to any one party or consortiums of parties. So inherently, that means there needs to be more contingency, there needs to be more set aside overall, and perhaps driving too hard, too early to a very fixed date can sometimes provide outcomes as well that are suboptimal. So we have the benefit now, Metro West is our 4th metro project in Sydney. We know a lot more about what we're building, how much it costs, the kind of risks that you can plan for, and then of course we also now know that you need to deal with the kind of risks that you can't plan for. None of our contracts, anyone's contracts, had clauses in them that covered off the impacts of COVID, for example. And that required a full renegotiation of a significant part of the projects we had underway at the time. And so I think we've probably learned a lot, that we just need to be more flexible in how we approach these things and make sure we are learning lessons and benefiting from the fact that this is not our first go.
Mate, we are out of time. I'm nearly out of voice. It's been 2 big, long days. Thanks, Peter. It's a tough job. I think you're doing pretty well, and I know circumstances and landscape's a lot different to what it was a little bit ago. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Peter Regan.
Thank you.